Around the year 262 AD, a Persian prophet named Mani sat down to describe the world he lived in. He listed the four great powers of that world: Rome, Persia, and China, and a kingdom in the Horn of Africa most modern viewers have never heard of, Aksum. He named it in the same breath as Rome. In the 3rd century AD, that comparison was not flattery. Aksum minted its own gold coins on Rome's weight standard. It ran the Red Sea trade from a Highland capital most Roman senators could not have found on a map. It converted to Christianity decades before Rome finished doing so, and it left behind the tallest single stones that human beings have ever quarried and raised as a monument. For 600 years, an African empire sat on the same map as Rome and Persia, and then in most of our textbooks it just quietly vanished. This is Aksum. Aksum sat on a highland plateau in what is now northern Ethiopia, roughly 2,000 meters above sea level. That gave the city cool, farmable air in the middle of a hot continent, and it put a port called Dulis, 4 days' ride away on the Red Sea coast, at the choke point of one of the richest trade routes on Earth. Everything moving between the Mediterranean and India passed through the Red Sea. Aksum sat on the African side of that door and charged a tax to walk through it. By the 3rd century AD, Aksumite gold coins were circulating from the Mediterranean to India, struck on the same weight standard as a Roman aureus. Merchants 1,000 miles away could weigh an Aksumite coin against a Roman one, and it balanced. That is not the coinage of a forgotten kingdom. But the coins are not what stops you when you walk into the ancient capital. The stones are just north of the modern town of Aksum, in a field the archaeologists call the Northern Stele Park. Dozens of enormous carved granite pillars stand or lie broken in the grass. They are not obelisks in the Egyptian sense. They are single pieces of stone, quarried from a hillside 4 kilometers away, dragged into the city, carved on all 4 sides to look like impossibly tall, multi-story stone buildings, complete with fake windows, fake doors, and fake beam ends, and then raised upright as royal grave markers. The tallest one still standing is 24 meters high. That is roughly the height of an 8-story building. It weighs around 160 tons. One stone. But the 24-meter one is not even the biggest they tried. Lying in fragments on the ground beside it is the Great Stele. When it stood, it was 33 meters tall, the tallest single piece of stone ever raised as a monument anywhere on Earth by any human civilization. 33 meters from a single quarried block, dragged across 4 kilometers of Ethiopian countryside, carved on every face, and then heaved upright. It collapsed during the erection. The archaeologists think it snapped its own foundation. The Aksumites had reached the physical limit of what stone and rope and human muscle could accomplish, and they had gone one step beyond it. Nobody before or since has tried to raise a single stone that tall, as a monument. If a civilization dragging 33-meter stones out of a hillside is the kind of history you wish you'd been taught, tap the like button. That tells the algorithm to show this to the next viewer who deserves it. Around the year 340 AD, an Aksumite king named Ezana became a Christian. That date matters. Constantine, the Roman emperor usually credited with making Rome Christian, had converted personally almost 30 years earlier. But Rome would not finalize Christianity as its official religion until the year 380. Ezana had already made Aksum a Christian state a full generation before that. We know this because he wrote it down. On a slab of granite still standing today, the Ezana stone, the same royal inscription appears 3 times in 3 languages: Ge'ez, Serbian, and Greek. The earliest versions credit a pantheon of gods. Later versions credit, in his own words, the Lord of Heaven. The coinage changes too. The pagan crescent and disc vanish from Aksumite coins. A cross replaces them. Aksum became one of the very first Christian states on Earth, entirely on its own decision. Aksumite Christianity did not stay in the palace. It went up. About 70 kilometers north of Aksum, a flat-top mountain called Debre Damo rises out of the highland like an altar. On top of it, reachable only by a 15-meter rope up a vertical cliff, sits a monastery. It was founded in the 6th century and it has been continuously inhabited by monks ever since. There is no staircase, there is no bridge. There is a leather rope hauled up by the monk at the top. And if you want to visit the monastery, you tie it around your waist and let the monks pull you up the cliff. Women are not allowed, neither are female animals. The tradition is older than most European nation-states. There is one more Aksumite tradition, and it is the one you have probably heard. Behind a small iron fence in Aksum, in a modest building called the Chapel of the Tablet, one monk lives alone. He is called the Guardian. He is chosen for life. He never leaves the compound. An Ethiopian Orthodox tradition held with complete seriousness is that inside that chapel, in a wooden ark, is the actual Ark of the Covenant from the Book of Exodus. Nobody else is allowed in. Not archaeologists, not journalists, not the Ethiopian government. When the Guardian dies, a new one takes his place. And he too will never leave and will never let anyone in. There is no way to verify the claim. That, in a sense, is the claim. This is not a treasure hunt. It is a living religious practice, guarded not because someone is hiding something, but because the sacred is by definition not for public inspection. We can note the tradition, respect it, and move on. Aksum did not fall to an army. It fell, slowly, to a change in the weather and a change in the map. Starting around the 5th century, the Ethiopian Highlands began drying out, and the rains that had made Aksum's agriculture possible weakened. In the same window, around 570 AD, the Sassanid Persian Empire conquered South Arabia and rerouted the Indian Ocean trade. Ships stopped stopping at Dulis and started going through the Persian Gulf instead. Aksum's port went quiet. Then, after 640 AD, the first Muslim conquest swept across Egypt and North Africa. The Red Sea markets that had made Aksum rich were suddenly on the other side of a religious frontier. Trade dried up. So did the coinage. The last known Aksumite gold coin dates to around 630 AD. The capital emptied out. The court moved south into the highlands. And within a few generations, the empire, in the political sense, was gone. But this is where most tellings of Aksum stop, and it is where they get it wrong. The empire fell. The culture did not. Aksum's language Ge'ez became the liturgical language of the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church, and remains so to this day, over 1,000 years later. The alphabet Ezana used on his stone is still the alphabet Amharic, and Tigrin Ya are written in. The Christianity Ezana adopted in the 4th century has never lapsed. In Ethiopia, Debre Damo is still a functioning monastery. St. Mary of Zion still stands. The Guardian is still there. And in 2005, one very specific piece of Aksum came home. In 1937, during Italy's occupation of Ethiopia, Mussolini's engineers cut one of Aksum's obelisks into 3 pieces, shipped it to Rome, and re-erected it near the Circus Maximus. 24 meters of Aksumite granite standing in the capital of the empire that had once considered itself Aksum's equal, a colonial trophy in every sense. Ethiopia asked for it back starting in 1947. Italy signed a treaty agreeing to return it, and then did not return it for another 58 years. In 2005, after decades of diplomatic pressure, the 3 sections were finally flown back to Aksum. 3 years later, they were re-erected on the original site. The Great Stele lies where it fell, but the 24-meter one is standing again, in the place it was raised in the first place, more than 1,000 years ago, by an empire a Persian prophet once named alongside Rome. Aksum was not a lost civilization. It was a civilization we were never told about. It made its own coins, wrote its own scripture, raised its own impossible stones, and answered to no one. When the trade routes moved and the rains failed, its political form dissolved, but its language, its faith, and its stone are still there, on the same highland plateau, in a country that never stopped being itself. The stone is home, the alphabet is alive, and the guardian is still keeping watch behind a small iron fence in Aksum. If you want more vanished cities, forgotten gods, and the myths that outlive the people who built them, subscribe to Ruins and Myth. That's what this channel does, 1 week at a time.